Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live on YouTube every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's Teacher on Fire is Lauren MacLean. Lauren is an elementary school teacher and the author of Me and My Sit Spot, Finding Common Ground, and Sitting with Nature, an educator's guide to sit spots. She is the host of the Teach Outdoors podcast, where she shares her passion for outdoor learning and promoting environmental education. She is also an outdoor learning consultant for school districts in Canada and the USA. Connect with Lauren on Instagram at teachoutdoors.ca, on LinkedIn, on YouTube at Teach Outdoors, on TikTok at Teach Outdoors CA, and on X at LK MacLean. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining me on the show today. Are you, my friend, ready to light it up this morning?
I am so excited, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Oh, what a pleasure. You are one of the few guests, Lauren, that I've actually interacted with in real life, and we've shared some great meals and conversations together. So what a treat it is for me to chat with you live and around the world on this Saturday morning. That's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get into this topic. Before we get into your work and mission, Lauren, let's dig into your story a little bit. Tell us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you've experienced somewhere in your teaching or education journey, and describe how you overcame it.
Honestly, Tim, this is such a difficult question for me. I would say I'm someone who sees the world through rose-colored glasses. And so it took a lot of thought for me to come up with something. I know I've had the typical, my classroom has some tough behaviors this year, or I wish I had a little more support in my classroom. But I honestly find that September is the hardest month, and then we always end up having a fantastic year. So if I can use my tough memory skills to think about 10 years ago, I did have a situation where a parent had some pretty significant concerns about in kindergarten, the amount of time we were outside and how that would take away from their academic goals in kindergarten. So instead of coming to me, unfortunately, they went straight to the administrator. We had a great sit-down conversation to sort of explain a bit more thoroughly about all the curricular connections, what the experiences outdoors would help them in terms of social emotional learning. And I'll be honest, that parent became my biggest fan that year. They've joined us in our outdoor explorations. They were asking me almost more questions than the students were about how to find the math in a tree or in the flower. And so I just think, when I think about back to that parent, that growth of, they were so nervous. I mean, that's a lot in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. I'm now a kindergarten parent. We're very nervous. It's our first experience. And so watching that growth in the parent really solidified to me how important it is, not only for front-loading expectations with the parents about our programming, but baby steps.
Well, I love that you stuck with it and you engaged, and I'm so glad to hear that they came around and became a believer in what you were trying to do in the classroom and with their child. That makes all the difference, and Thankfully that is usually the result, again, if we stick with it and don't sort of draw our swords as teachers. I want to say good morning to a friend in the audience. We've got Livia Chan tuning in from nearby Burnaby. Good morning to you, Livia. And another friend, Brian Carpenter, is here from Abbotsford as well. Another great educator. Brian, good morning to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us, friends. Well, Lauren, congratulations on the publication of another children's book, Finding Common Ground. And as I dug into your growing body of literature, I realized just how prolific you are quickly becoming. So I want to put these up on the screen just to sort of situate people a little bit. We've got Me and My Sit Spot coming out, I want to say a few years ago, and then Finding Common Ground just came out officially this month. We've got another one on the way, which I forgot about, and you're going to let us know about that one. But I want to talk first of all about this book on the right, Finding Common Ground. So share with us about the main themes and takeaways for children. What's going on in that book?
My big thing with this book is how important it is for us to see the various students that we have in our classroom. So the big theme is the slow growing oak tree and the lively, fast growing dandelion. The other way we can look at it is sort of the tall poppy and the short clover. And how can we as educators and as parents ensure that they all get equal sunshine? Because it really is so easy when you have that child that sits up at the front, smile on their face, and they're the ones engaging in conversations. But then we've also got that shy little nervous one that sits in the back, prefers to be hiding. Well, they still need equal amount of attention. And I would say, as a mother of two, I have I have one of each. So I have one very nervous one, and I have one that is exactly a carbon copy of myself, loud, energetic, talks constantly. And so it's really about, these personalities and how we can find and share experiences together to find common ground, to help one another. It's this experience of self-discovery in an outdoor classroom setting.
I love how you are weaving in those social emotional competencies right in that context, of course, about the outdoor environment. And you do that so beautifully. Lauren, let's zoom out a little bit. You've built this thriving education brand around teaching outdoors, which is not everyone's cup of tea, or at least it's not today. Maybe by the end of this conversation, we'll have some more converts. But what is it about teaching outdoors that sets you on fire?
Well, I'm sure even through my audio and maybe through my video, you can see how much energy I have. I am very clearly someone that has ADHD. Thank you, Dad. And there you go to my little kids. You're welcome. I actually think it's a gift because we love multitasking. And again, I think that's where the positive rose-colored glasses energy comes into mind. So when I'm outside, my energy sort of is able to, I find my energy outside. When I'm inside, I have these walls and I feel constricted. It's not that I'm claustrophobic. It's just that I feel my energy being squished. And so when I'm outside, I get to do that deep breath. I get to be myself. I'm so much more curious and creative when I'm outside. And I do think that my students, I see their confidence building through the year. They engage in more risky play, in more teamwork, collaborative play, and it's all land-based. I mean, how exciting. We're learning about what is surrounding us and not some creature that lives, in the South Pole. I'm actually learning about what I can see with my own two eyes.
So good. I think a lot of people sort of jump to the conclusion that you're interested in the trees, the grass, the flora and fauna, and of course you are. But you articulated that sense of, okay, there's a relief there for some students, for some of our children that experience almost like I don't know if claustrophobic is too strong of a word, but there's a containment in the school building that is not particularly friendly to humans, and especially little humans, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, some students can have the adverse effect. Sometimes they find that vastness of outside to be a bit overwhelming. And so I think it's about knowing our students and taking baby steps to make sure that everybody's feeling comfortable.
So Lauren, describe the natural environment around your school. It's phenomenal.
It is. That's the perfect word for it, Tim. I live at the top of a mountain surrounded by a beautiful temperate rainforest. We are quite steep on our school grounds. So you can imagine to get down to a playground, there's quite a lot of switchbacks to get down there, a beautiful green field. We even have a creek running through it. We are very lucky. Now, with all this amazing nature does come with a lot of wildlife that we might not necessarily want to encounter. So we do have to practice bear drills in September. Well, a few times throughout the year. We have to be aware of cougars, bobcats, coyotes. We have quite a range that do like to visit, not often, but we do have to be aware of it. When I was teaching at my last district, it was a bit more urban. We still had green spaces, beautiful green fields, but it was a lot more on blacktop surfaces. So we got to use resources like sidewalk math, which is a beautiful resource to look up. And there's still so much that we can experiment and explore and investigate in an urban space, same as we can up in my mountaintop. That is like a paradise, I will admit.
Okay, so no excuses is what I'm hearing, and we'll get to those teachers who are thinking about all of the practical obstacles to teaching outdoors. We'll get to them in just a moment. Thank you for joining us, Teachers on Fire. If you're getting value from this conversation, give the video a like. So Lauren, let's talk to that teacher who likes the idea of outdoor learning. They say, Lauren, I would love to take my class of littles outside more often. I'd love to take them into the forest, but how do I teach math? How do I teach social studies in the trees? What can I possibly do? Or maybe they would say they are just a school with gravel and blacktop and they don't have trees either. So I know there's a lot there, but speak to that teacher who feels discouraged that it just isn't possible in their context.
Yeah, and I think there's quite a few different concerns or obstacles that we could consider.
Right.
There could be ones like curricular obstacles, for instance, that you talked about. But the nice thing about outdoor learning is that all the curricular areas can be woven together. So we could have, again, if we're thinking about the tree example. So if we're looking at a tree, maybe especially in BC, I'm teaching grade 2 right now. Our science could be about how their features help them to adapt to the environment. Maybe in socials, I might consider how the history of the tree has helped shape it, or how the different Indigenous peoples of BC might value different types of tree for different reasons. We could do oral storytelling around trees with the language arts. We can do printmaking with parts of trees for arts. And we can even do physical and health education. We play tree tag. So you're safe if you're able to touch a hemlock tree, right? So everybody has to go find and identify a hemlock tree, and then you could switch it. Now you're only safe if you can touch a cedar tree. So there's so many ways that we can be creative to help sort of blend and weave all those areas together. If it's a classroom management obstacle, my students won't listen, or maybe they won't learn. The nice thing about outdoor learning is that because it's so holistic, it really does promote collaboration, teamwork, problem solving. We're on the rainy West Coast, so maybe some concerns might be about weather. Well, the nice thing is that there's a lot of stores that we can, as schools, ask the PAC to buy extra supplies. We can have extra raincoats, extra rain pants, extra rain boots, and just have, there was a teacher that I knew in another district, they had a lending library. So it was in the hallway. All the items had a bright piece of duct tape wrapped around it so that the students never felt that they couldn't be well prepared to go outside.
Well, Lauren, you just knocked off quite a few of my excuses. They're pushed out of the picture now. Thank you so much. But a lot of creativity and some great workarounds there. So, Lauren, more teaching and learning outdoors requires us to think differently about some of the big ones, these big words that do dictate a lot of our instruction and teaching decisions. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking specifically about curriculum. You mentioned curricular integration as sort of one solution here. What about feedback and assessment? How do you address these things in the outdoor classroom?
Well, and I think the main thing about when I think about nature and this integration of curriculum and assessment and feedback that you mentioned is flexibility. And that took me a long time to learn. I think when I first started, I was pretty rigid. I had my lesson plan. I knew what I was going to do. But when I go outside, nature is so unpredictable that I had to learn to be a bit more flexible so that everything aligned. Nature aligned with my way of thinking and planning and providing feedback. Nature really is now our textbook outside. So I'm learning to read nature and sort of follow the student leads and student passions when we're outside. So again, if I'm thinking about feedback when I'm in the classroom, again, sometimes things are quite hands-on, still indoors. But if we're doing any type of journal, I can sort of wait for that student before I'm giving feedback. I mean, I'm trying to do my best getting around to every student in the moment. But when I'm outside, our feedback is quite immediate. So if we are trying to build a shelter that's big enough to maybe fit your foot inside, that has to be waterproof. As the students are building that, I'm walking around to each group and trying to provide feedback if they need it. I might try to prompt them about talking about different types of shapes or different sizes of branches or balance or width, maybe different types of ways to measure something. We also use a lot of circle time in our outdoor program so that we can, again, have that time for observational feedback or more of the reflection circle piece. So maybe I'm going to ask a question and we're going to do one round at our circle that has a core competency prompt to it. So maybe as you're building that shelter, what is something that you were thinking about while you were doing it? What would you do differently if we were going to do this activity again? And then everybody has a time to share and learn from each other as we're in circle.
I don't know if, I'm sure you are quite aware of this actually, but you are describing ADST as well.
For sure.
So for those not in this province, ADST is Applied Design, Skills and Technologies. And a big part of that curriculum is design thinking, which talks about iteration and prototyping and then collecting peer feedback and potential user feedback and improving on the design. So you got me kind of excited because I thought, okay, yet another integration that we can bring into that outdoor classroom is ADST. Yeah. And what you described there with, I'm sure just one of many examples, building that small shelter is... that would be a prime activity that fits within that curriculum. I want to touch on your first children's book, Me and My Sit Spot, Lauren. And this is probably something that students certainly need to develop, and I think a lot of adults as well. So what are the benefits of a sit spot, and what does yours look like?
Yeah, I've got a couple, which is quite nice. I mean, that's a nice thing about having variety. It doesn't only have to look and sound and feel like one sort of thing or one place. For me, the benefits of my sit spot, again, because of my excess energy, I get to finally calm down. I get to stop moving for once. I can do that indoors. It is a lot harder for me. When I'm outside, again, I get to have those deep breaths. I get to look at what's the same, what's different as it was yesterday. I can sort of predict the weather as I'm outside, or maybe ask some critical thinking questions. I wonder if, or I wonder why. It really helps enhance my focus and my mindfulness, so I can do a lot of body scanning while I'm out there. And I'm way less stressed because it all just floats away. So the one that's by my house is just down the road. Again, I've got this beautiful forest trail back there, and then there's this little creek. And if I sort of go under a couple of hedges and the little brambles, I can sit in this spot that has this beautiful boulder, and the water's always trickling over it, even in the heat of summer. And I'm completely alone, and I'm about a 2-minute walk away from my house. So I am very lucky.
I love your sit spot. I can tell you that right now. And it makes me sort of wish that I had my own. Maybe I just need to walk around and find one here, even while we stay for a short time in Vancouver's downtown. I'm sure there's a good sit spot around the corner. But thank you so much for that. And it makes me think about the executive functioning and self-regulation skills that we want to build in all of our students. I'm sure it's helpful. Do all of your students in your homeroom have a sit spot as well?
We do. Now, because we're still in the middle of September, we're sort of still trying different ones on. So we're visiting one, and then we do a what did we like? What do we wish we had more of? And then the next day we'll find a new spot. So we're in this, finding the right shoe type of phase. We don't want to commit too quickly. And we make it a game, because a lot of kids don't want to sit still. That doesn't sound fun. And so we make it a game of hide and seek or camouflage. So maybe the nervous learners are, because it's a game and we're all some of us are quite competitive, they are going to get down low when they wouldn't normally have wanted to get down that low to the forest floor or down by the garden. And so now they're doing it because it's a game. Well, and after that game, I can say, wow, that was amazing hiding. We can also call that a sit spot, right? And so then we sort of do it in small phases like that.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Lauren, you've also built a workshop, I noticed in your materials, for educators called Nature's Path, a year of monthly sparks. I'm curious, can you say more about what this offering looks like for educators and schools?
Yes, I'm so proud of this. It's taken a few years to actually organize and trial and improve. So, in essence, it is 12 months of support for either an individual teacher, but it's mostly school based. So, the Pro-D committee contacts me. I provide them with all the files. So in September, you get a 5 to 7 minute video that talks about the moon cycles, what to notice that month, different areas of curriculum that you could investigate based off of an anchor book, going on a nature walk, and it's all tied into one. And I also every month give you a little bit of nature knowledge. So I'll tell you about a bird that you're most likely about to see that month, or about a tree or a plant that month as well. And every month has downloadable resources for K to 7. So a different type of nature journal that you can print off just to make it easier for everybody to go outside. Most of the schools that are using this for across Canada now play the videos at the beginning of their monthly staff meetings. So it's a great way for staff to come together. We're all hearing the same language. We all get an idea of what to notice, how to adapt it for your different contexts. Some schools in the East Coast of the USA are using it. Well, I'm talking about a different type of season, but it's still a really good nudge for them to come together around some common language. And then some other schools are using it for different grade group, like lunch and learn sessions. So I'm really happy with it. The feedback has been incredible. So yeah, email if you have any questions.
So proud of you and the work you're doing there, Lauren, for schools around the world, literally. And I think focusing our staff and integrating those holistic practices has just got to be helpful for teachers right now who are sometimes burning a little low. Their fire might be burning a little low. I think a little nature time, little nature reflection can only be a good thing. Lauren, before we get into my biographical questions for you, I'm just thinking about your most recent project. Now, Finding Common Ground just came out this month. Very exciting. But you've got another book in the works, and you may have touched on it. I maybe missed it, just being a little bit rattled by my internet problems here. But I want to make sure to let you speak to your most recent project. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'll even hold up because I just got my first sample. It's not out yet, but it's called Sitting with Nature, an Educator's Guide to Sit Spots. And it's being published by the Outdoor Learning School and Store. So it has been a 4-year project of collecting different experiences that I've had outdoors. Some don't work well, so then I take those out and then I collect other examples. But it really, I think, is going to help educators see how Sit Spots fits into the wider curriculum, the pedagogy of outdoor learning. So it's not that we're just going outside and sitting for an hour, no talking. We're going to think about what to explore outside. Let's go for a nature walk, Brian. We're going to go on a nature walk. We're going to have a circle. We're going to have an activity. And I always give an activity for younger students and for older students. And then a way to assess the process, not the product. So there's a lot of formative assessment information in this book as well. And then how to incorporate assessment and your activity into a sit spot prompt.
All right.
So I'm really excited.
You should be excited. It sounds really rich. Thank you so much for sharing about that, Lauren. Livia is still here as well. She says, sounds like a cool resource. Congrats to you, Lauren. Well, thank you so much. You were just bringing so much value. And when I have a question about productivity here in a moment. So that's top of mind for me is how are you doing it all, Lauren? But first, I want to say if you are enjoying this conversation, Teachers on Fire, consider adding the Teachers on Fire YouTube channel to your morning commute. Start your day on fire with people like Lauren. So Lauren, let's get into a few questions as we start to wind down that just focus on you as a person and an educator outside of education. What's another area of learning for you? And perhaps I need to say outside of nature. I'm not sure, but perhaps that was your answer. I don't want to steal that from you. What is it outside of the classroom that ignites your passions and brings you alive as a human being?
Well, I think for me, Before I became a teacher, I actually played field hockey for Canada for many years. So I have in me definitely this need to have challenge and thrill and goal setting. I mean, that was such a big part of team sports is let's come together, let's find some goals. How are we going to get there? And so I'm not playing field hockey anymore, but what I am doing is I'm doing a lot of hiking and mountain biking. And for me, I'm still getting that thrill and that sense of challenge. And then I would say on the opposite, the way that I am trying to calm down is I'm trying to learn to garden. I know I'm a nature outdoor educator, but gardening and me, we are slowly improving our relationship of understanding each other. It's coming slowly, but that's definitely something that is of an interest for me.
That makes so much sense, Lauren, for so many reasons, right? You're connecting with nature, but it does really slow you down. You've got to take your time in that field. That's a patience I don't yet have, but I need to cultivate that as well. No pun intended. So, Lauren, coming back to productivity, again, this is technically your 5th publication, if I'm counting correctly. Share about a personal habit or a productivity hack that contributes to your success and allows you to do everything you do while still being an active educator and mother.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that I have ADHD because I'm always looking for something to keep me on my toes. I always wake up at least an hour before I know my kids are about to wake up because I really, for how loud and energetic I am, I need quiet time. I need my space to have my coffee, or right now I'm really into mud water. It's delicious. I know it sounds odd, but I need to be able to have my hot drink in silence. Basically, I need that hour. I can do personal work. Sometimes I just sit on my couch and I look outside, and that's my indoor sit spot. But it gives me time to sort of set goals for the day. So what worked well yesterday? I'd like to repeat that. What didn't work so well? I'm going to make some adaptations. So that for me has really helped with my productivity, is that I need that time in the morning to sort of mentally and physically get ready.
Quiet time and mud water. Love it. Point us to an edtech tool or app. Now, I know you're not really a technophile, but is there a tool or app that you currently love using somewhere in your professional practice?
I think what is perfect up my alley is the Seesaw app. And that's what our whole school uses for communication with parents. It is user friendly. So for me, that I'm a little intimidated by technology, it is so simple for me to be able to take a picture, a video, interview a student, take a video of the student reading, exploring, doing risky play outside, and then I can share that with parents. For me, that has been absolutely a game changer.
And I need to remember that you are a Seesaw user so that we can compare Seesaw activity ideas at our next group get together. We've got to do that. Recommend a book, Lauren, one that you've been reading lately, or perhaps one of your all-time faves that has been deeply influential.
Yeah, this summer I read Unschooled, Raising Curious, Well-Educated Children Outside the Conventional Classroom, and it's by Kerry McDonald, and I loved it. I've read it cover to cover, and now I'm rereading it for the second time. I love how she has case studies talking about different instances, so it's not just a one size fits all. It's very open-ended. I love that she describes that learning is innate, it's interest-driven, and there's so much connection to land. So it's different than homeschooling. Homeschooling can still be quite structured and rigid. Unschooling is really just learning to listen about what your child wants to learn and going from there. So I really loved that book. Would highly recommend it.
All right, Unschooled. And tell us about someone that we need to follow on Education X, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, some educator who's been inspiring you.
All right. I can't give just one because I have so many that I love, Tim, but I'll give 3. Janice Novakowski. I would highly recommend following her. Megan Zeni, or Room to Play as well, and the Outdoor Learning Store. So those 3 are my go-to. I love how much information they share online. It's so inspirational.
And last question, Lauren, just for fun, I don't know if this is happening these days. September's a pretty busy month. month. But if you do get to that point in the day or the week where you just have no brain capacity left for anything productive, what are you streaming on Netflix or other platforms these days?
I still watch Alone, so that survival game that's out in the wilderness. My husband and I love watching that and sort of sharing notes. I love that. I love the creativity and the critical thinking and the adventure in that show. I think it's on the History Channel.
Okay, very fun. Lauren, as we wrap up, what are the best ways for the Teachers on Fire listening to follow you and connect with your work?
I think the easiest way would be on Instagram. So that's at teachoutdoors.ca, or again through my YouTube channel, which is also Teach Outdoors. And my website is also teachoutdoors.ca, where you can email me straight from there.
Sounds good, Lauren. I want to thank you, my friend, so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. This has been fun and inspiring. You've got me thinking, so I really appreciate the insights you've shared and continue to share. I'm so glad, too, for Mr. MacLean for facilitating this conversation. So thank you, sir, as well for that. Teachers on Fire, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day tuning into this podcast, either on video form or on the audio-only version. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Lauren MacLean sparked your thinking and ignited your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.